Hi everyone, I'm Kayla and welcome back to my little corner of the criminal content YouTube channel. The story I have for you today is about Thierry Tilly, a con man who turned 3 generations of a French aristocratic family into a cult. This is part 1 of a 2-part series. The Védrines family was aristocratic in name only. They weren't particularly wealthy, but they did have a chateau in the French town of Montflanquin. It's spelled Montflanquin. I'm so sorry. I'm from the Valley and I'm terrible at pronouncing French words. But I just looked it up. Montflanquin. Here, this is what I'm learning. Montflanquin. I can't do it, but just know that I'm really trying my best. So there were 11 family members over 3 generations that got conned by Thierry Tilly. Guillemets' son, Philippe, who was a Shell Oil executive, and his girlfriend, Brigitte Martine. Guillemets' other son, Charles-Henri, who was 53, who was a gynecologist, and his wife, Christine. We have Charles-Henri and Christine's 3 children. Guillaume, who was 24, Amory, who was 21, and Diane, who was 16. Guillemets' daughter, Ghislaine, who was 55, she ran a secretarial school in Paris, and her husband, Jean Marchand. And then Ghislaine's children, Guillemette, who was 24, and Francois, who was 22. So in 1997, Ghislaine's school, where her kids also went, was going bankrupt. So she and a bunch of other parents whose kids were at the school took over to at least try to keep it afloat until the end of the year so their kids could complete the year of school. Ghislaine was looking for a janitorial company for the school, and this guy, Vincent David, a lawyer who was also working with this group of parents, recommended the company of his friend Thierry Tilly. Vincent was like, Thierry is a philanthropist, he's well connected, he's trustworthy, I've done business with him, he owns 10 businesses, and Ghislaine was like, in. By 1999, Ghislaine was director of the school, and she had hired Thierry full-time. He was her right-hand man. She didn't make any decisions without him, and his salary was double hers, and he was getting bonuses that nobody else working at the school was getting. In 2000, Jean Marchand was the first family member to meet Thierry Tilly, and he immediately was like, this dude is ridiculous. He is a con man. He's a fraud. And his wife, Ghislaine, just didn't want to hear it. Soon after, Philippe's kids also met Thierry Tilly, and they were like, this dude is ridiculous. There's no way anything he's saying is true. But Ghislaine was just too far gone already to hear anything they were saying. In August of 2000, Ghislaine brought Thierry to the family chateau where they spent their summers, and the whole family got to meet him. And Ghislaine had spent the last 3 years talking Thierry up to her family, so their expectations were sky high. The Védrines family found Thierry to be charming and intelligent and conveniently knowledgeable about each of their individual specific interests. The whole summer, Thierry stayed in a rental house nearby the chateau, and he spent every day there. He got to know all the family members one-on-one and made them feel really important. He went to Philippe and he was like, you should be running Shell Oil. And Philippe was like, yeah, I should be running Shell Oil. He also seemed to wield a lot of power over courts and governmental agencies, and he got the family out of a lot of tight spots. He also looked through the family's finances and told them that their investments were in all the wrong places and was like, let me invest your money in my companies because I have insider knowledge of the world's markets and I can get you an 11 to 14% return monthly. Now, I was surprised to learn that he actually delivered on this promise somehow. He also told the family some fantastical parts about his past. He said that his mother was 14 when she had him and she was a figure skater. He said that he almost played professional football and tennis. He was a pilot. He was a professional skier. He was a descendant of the Habsburgs. He had a PhD in marketing. He had a specialist degree in counterfeit money. He had a master's degree. And also dumb, inconsequential stuff he told them he was ambidextrous, and he told them that he could run 1,000 meters in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. He also told them that he worked with a humanitarian organization called the Blue Light Foundation, the president of which was an elusive figure named Jack Gonzalez. Predictably, this was all lies. In reality, Thierry came from a modest background. His father was a driver, his mother was a nurse. He apparently did have a photographic memory, which is admittedly pretty cool. He lived with his parents until he was 30, which we're not going to judge in this economy. He started several businesses, all of which had failed, including, so he met Vincent David, the lawyer from the school, because he convinced him to invest in this real estate project where he was building a bunch of condos in the Alps. And he told Vincent, like, I can't pay you for your contracting, but I can offer you one of the condos and money on the back end. And that whole project ended up being a scheme and a fraud. And Vincent David was left with like months of unpaid rent in this condo he had gotten. But Vincent was like, oh, he's just like a young kid figuring out business. He has a lot of promise. I'll just keep working with him. Something's bound to hit. At one point, Vincent even let Thierry live in his house, and eventually his wife was like, get him out of here, he's clearly a fraud, and she kicked him out. So that summer, as Thierry wooed the Védrines family, he also told them a story of a conspiracy. Apparently, there was a secret organization from a secret society that was a offshoot of the Knights of the Round Table, whose purpose was to seek out influential families and protect them from their enemies. Thierry was a secret agent for this secret society, and he had been sent to protect the Védrines family because they were under attack by Freemasons who were trying to take their money and destroy their family. Why? Well, because the Védrines were one of the families who had been chosen to return France to her former glory, whatever that means. And the Védrines believed every word Thierry said. Everyone except for Jean Marchand, who knew what was up. So Thierry recognized that Jean Marchand was not buying any of this, so he started telling Ghislaine that Jean Marchand was cheating on her and that Jean Marchand was part of the Freemason plot against the family. And Thierry also started blaming all the shitty stuff that happened to people in the family on the Freemasons. One time, one of their cars was stolen and Thierry was like, oh my God, it's the Freemasons. But then the next day the car was returned and he was like, and that was my secret agents looking out for you. Thierry also told Ghislaine that there were other secret agents in the area that he was working with. And apparently when they were out and about, he would just nod to strangers and pretend that they were the other secret agents. He also told Ghislaine that the school that she worked for was being targeted by Freemasons who were willing to use deadly force to gain the property. So, of course, Ghislaine became increasingly paranoid, and in mid-2001, the school officially went bankrupt and shut down. Thierry convinced the family to stop paying their taxes and to send him the money instead so that he could, handle paying their taxes for them. He also managed to manipulate Philippe's girlfriend, Bridget, to the point where she became agoraphobic and she moved in with the family at the chateau. And he asked the family for more and more money. And as their money dwindled and they became more and more under the influence of Thierry, the family cut ties with the outside world until they became a cult. In March of 2001, Thierry fled France for England to escape what would have been a 1-year sentence for one count of fraudulent bankruptcy, but he told Ghislaine that he was going as part of his undercover mission. And he was able to manipulate the family just as easily over the phone and email as he was to manipulate them in person. In September 2001, Ghislaine finally kicked Jean Marchand out of the house after he asked her for a technical divorce because he wanted to protect their money from being tied up in the bankruptcy of the school. And also because Thierry had finally succeeded in convincing Ghislaine that Jean Marchand was part of the Masonic plot against the family. When Jean Marchand left the cult, he found that Ghislaine had completely drained their bank account and he ended up being cut off from his family for 8 years. Then Thierry told Ghislaine and Philippe and Bridget that they had to move out of the house and into the empty school building. And they ended up staying there for 4 months, waiting for Thierry to make good on his promises to save the school. And he also told them that they needed to remain sequestered and remain hyper vigilant to ensure their safety from the Freemasons who were trying to get the property. In December of 2001, all the assets from the school were seized, and Thierry was like, "This is part of the Masonic plot against you guys. You're not safe. You have to move." Later in that month, Guillemette, the younger, became incredibly paranoid, left her new husband, fled to the chateau, and then he called her and was like, "You need to come home. What's going on?" And she was like, "I can't leave. All of the cars are rigged with bombs." And in order to keep Guillemette there, Thierry made up a bunch of stories about how her husband Sebastian was part of the Masonic plot. He was cheating on her with sex workers, and she was not safe with him. From January 2002 to August 2003, Ghislaine, her daughter Guillemette, Philippe, Bridget, and Grandma Guillemette were all sequestered in the family's chateau. Thierry completely cut them off from the outside world, and he only let Ghislaine out twice a month to go buy groceries. While they were sequestered, aside from asking them for a ton of money, Thierry kept them on their toes, doing a bunch of weird, useless stuff just to increase their paranoia. He made them keep detailed notes of all of their daily activities. He installed a bunch of security cameras, and he told them that they obviously weren't safe. He said that he had agents hiding in the woods to protect them, and he told them that all of their neighbors were trying to kill them. At one point, the older Guillemette started complaining of symptoms of cataracts, and he was like, "Those aren't cataracts, that's your enemies shining lasers straight into your eyeballs from outside the house in the woods." He asked them for between 2,000 and 10,000 euros a day. At the point that their lockdown began, Charles Henri was the only one working, but he abandoned his gynecological practice and joined the lockdown within a few months. And at this point, Guillaume was working as Thierry's personal assistant at the Blue Light Foundation. We will come back to him. In 2003, Thierry told Charles Henri that the Freemasons were planning to dig up all of his past medical mistakes in order to put him in jail for malpractice. So he needed to sell his company and liquidate it to pay for Thierry to continue to protect the family from their enemies. So he gave his patients to his colleagues, sold the business, and finally fully cut himself off from the rest of the world. And then Thierry was like, "Well, that's not enough. You also have to sell your home in Bordeaux." So he did. In January 2003, Thierry all of a sudden was like, "You guys need to leave the chateau and go to Philippe's house for a few days." Thierry wanted them out of the house because he knew that their assets were about to be seized, because they had stopped paying their taxes, because he had not paid their taxes with the money they gave him to pay their taxes. But they witnessed this happening, and Thierry was like, "Don't even worry about it. This is actually a plot to make you seem vulnerable, to lure your enemies in so that we can neutralize them." Outside of the cult, Jean Marchand had been doing everything he could to get the family out from under Thierry Tilly's thumb. He tried to get legal guardianship over his wife and his mother, but he was denied. He turned to the press, and he managed to convince one journalist to go to the chateau and see what was happening, but the family then sued for breach of privacy. But then a couple other journalists picked up the story. The family became known as the recluses of Montflanquin. I'm sorry. But try as he might, Jean Marchand could not get the family out of Thierry Tilly's control. And that is where we end part 1. Come back for part 2 when we see if Jean Marchand is able to save his family from this cult. It's true. It's a true story. So we know what happens, but if you want a little bit of suspense, don't Google this. Bye.